Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine. You're listening to a new Redefining Security podcast. Have you ever thought that we are selling cybersecurity insincerely, buying it indiscriminately, and deploying it ineffectively? Perhaps we are. So let's look at how we can organize a successful InfoSec program that integrates people, process, technology, and culture to drive growth and protect business value. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
Imperva is the cybersecurity leader whose mission is to protect data and all paths to it with a suite of integrated application and data security solutions. Learn more at imperva.com.
Asgardio by WSO2 is a developer-focused identity and access management solution. Offered as Identity as a Service, or IDaaS, Asgardio by WSO2 creates seamless login experiences to your apps in minutes. Pentera, the leader in automation security validation, allows organizations to continuously test the integrity of all cybersecurity layers by emulating real-world attacks at scale to pinpoint the exploitable vulnerabilities and prioritize remediation towards business impact. Learn more at www.pentera.io. EdgeScan offers continuous vulnerability intelligence as a service, accurately identifying vulnerabilities and exposures across the full stack. All threats are verified by cybersecurity experts, providing exploitable risk and remediation guidance, virtually false positive free. Learn more at edgescan.com.
Marco.
Sean.
Can you imagine you and I trying to write a book?
No, we make no sense.
There's always that part, but
who will buy it?
And there's that. Why would we bother? We don't have anything to say anyway, but I'm just thinking, I mean, we do a lot together, but writing a book, even on your own, is challenging. Two people...
Tell me about it. I've been going at it for the past 25 years, and I'm still not there.
You're almost ready to start. Exactly. Now think about, I don't know, maybe our guests will tell us, but think about 18 or 19 people coming together and writing a book. And it makes me, I'm a visual person, so it makes me think of some of the music composition that came over the last couple of years, where you had a drummer and a percussionist and a flutist and a flautist, maybe, is that the right word? And somebody who plays a saxophonist. Anyway, a bunch of people come together on Zoom and they create something magical, right? Each with their own part, and together it tells a story. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Not music, but a book. And it's in the wheelhouse of cybersecurity and maybe perhaps even the broader view of technology as well. And we have three of the authors that are part of the 19 author tribe, if you will, that they wrote a book, Marco.
Yeah, they wrote a book, and I think it's an excellent idea to have as many writers as this, because it's about representing diversity. So why not having a ton of different opinion and presentation and perspective on this? But again, I think that what is fantastic about this conversation is actually one of the author is one good friend, also host of a couple of shows on ITSP Magazine, Angela Marafino, and she's going to co-host with us. So we're taking a little bit of pressure out of this. She already knows, obviously, about the book. And Angela, welcome to the show. We're going to let you introduce the guests. How about that?
Oh, nice. Hi, Sean. Yeah. Hi, Marco. Good to be here. Yeah, so I'll introduce everyone. We have Jasmine Henry and Dr. Meg Layton, two of my, I am a fan of both of them. I was going to say two of my biggest fans, but that's definitely not the way that it is.
Goes both ways, so it's fine.
That may be true as well.
I concur.
So I would say if you don't know who Dr. Meg is, you need to. And I will also say Jasmine is the brainchild behind this book. So I will let them talk a little bit about that. So Jasmine, want to start off?
Sure. I'm Jasmine Henry. I am a security director at Jupiter One. I contributed a chapter to Reinventing Cybersecurity, our book, and I was also executive editor, which I think means that I played a big role in sort of relationship management and overall editorial strategy, but I'm not terribly great at line edits. That was outsourced to a professional.
And I'm Dr. Meg Layton. I had a chapter in the book, and I'm a big fan of both Jasmine and Angela, so there you go. I am Director of Security Architecture and Engineering for Children's National Hospital in Washington, D.C.
Nice. And so I'm going to kick it into gear. I mean, this is such a cool thing. And I have to start by saying that I'm a big fan of the name of the book, because here we are on Redefining Cybersecurity channel, talking about reinventing cybersecurity, the book. And so let's start there. What in the name, and for those who are listening, Angela's holding up a copy of the book. Starting with the name, perhaps, what was the goal for the book? Did you come up with the name and then the book kind of came, or did it the other way around, or how did that all come about?
The name and the form of the book is really a byproduct of the community of authors. I think that my original vision for the book was a little bit different than what it became. I was initially thinking of calling it Reinventing Cybersecurity, Tales of Rebellion and Resistance. However, I realized the kind of cohesive theme across our stories was a lot quieter than Scorched Earth. I also originally envisioned that the book was going to be a book about security, a highly technical book that just so happened to be by women and non-binary authors. And I realized that it is very difficult to talk about what we do and how we do it without also talking about identity, kind of having that intersectional lens. So it is a book about security written through a lens that acknowledges identity.
Which in itself is reinventing security, both in the process and in the industry as well. Right? Obviously, it's a challenge we continue to face, equality throughout the roles that we're looking to fill. So is this, you said it's highly technical, maybe a view of kind of the flow of the book. Is there a storyline through it, or is it a collection of stories with, you mentioned a common theme? Are folks to use it as a reference, or kind of talk through what you think the readers will do going through the content?
So I think, Jasmine kind of presented it out to us authors, and then we everybody took it in a different direction. It was my experience with it, which I really, really loved. So it is a collection of stories, but it celebrates this journey. Some of us are older, some of us are newer in the industry. We all had these kind of different perspectives with where we were in our journey in cybersecurity, and that informs kind of our next steps. But we're also using it to kind of let other people learn from our experiences, I would say, and recognize and empathize if those are not the experiences you have. It certainly helps inform your journey all the way along. So I personally took them in pieces because it was an opportunity to learn more about the community around me and the people I was interacting with. And it just turned into this kind of huge celebration. Most of us are still in kind of the Slack channels and celebrate each other when we have these little wins. And it's this super supportive group of people now that know each other through this, right? It's not like we met each other at work each day, but we have this shared experience of creating this book together. And so that's why I took it very, very individually, whether every reader will do that or they'll kind of read it and take away, here's where I am in the journey, here's where I might consider going next. Hopefully some of them are, like, look at my chapter and think, oh, I need to make my discussion of security a little more accessible to the general public, because I do a lot of talking about making cybersecurity kind of everybody's responsibility and how important it is to be able to talk at that level to folks along the way. So I think it's been my experience, everybody has something to take away from the book, but they have to find it, I guess is what I would say.
I would agree with that. We didn't have like the breakdown of the 3 sections like ahead of time or anything. That came after editing and right, everyone responsible for the layout, like reading the chat. And can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna blame the cat on it.
No, she's nowhere near it. She's messing stuff up, but not that. So it's broken down into reinventing our future, reinventing what we do, and reinventing who we are. And my chapter happens to be in the who we are section. So when people say, it depends on the context, but like my chapter is a different outlook on imposter syndrome and how we address that and things I think should change. But it depends on the conversation. So if I start it with that information, they're like, well, what's the name of the book? And then I say reinventing cybersecurity, and they're like, how did you get there? Or if I start off with, hey, I contributed to a book, it's called Reinventing Cybersecurity, then I break down the sections to kind of like tell people, okay, these are the sections. You could take a section, right, based on where you're at now and where you want to go. Or you can kind of take learnings from the 3rd section, and doesn't even have to be related to cybersecurity necessarily. There's still learnings you could take away, but I think that's kind of, all of them have something you could take away, but still, right, just noting that there's something in it for everyone, and breaking it down a little bit is kind of typical for what I do when I talk about it to others.
So I think at the core of this, if I understand it, of course, everybody coming with a different perspective, as I said at the beginning, but also because this book is about diversity, right, in the industry. So I like the idea, if I understand well, there wasn't really much coordination. Like, it's kind of like come as you are, right? Bring what is relevant to you and make a statement about that. And I think that that's exactly maybe what the perception should be, the experience of who reads it. Like, it's not a structured story. It's just like a lot of different thoughts, and it is up to the reader to put it together. And I'm just guessing this. So my question actually is, tell me about the cover, Jasmine, because I'm looking at the cover. I think is really cool. How did you come up with that creative concept, and how does, the cover is very important in a book. It's help you to choose if you want to read it or not, if you want to commit to it. So to me, it says a lot, but I'd like to know what's the creative input for that.
We had a cover brainstorming session.
Yeah.
To be fully transparent, Jasmine was like, let's get together and talk about this.
I want to know how that went.
And
wine.
And I kept, at that time, I don't know if we still had the original title or if I just kept it in my head. So when we were discussing things, I was definitely like sort of cyberpunk person that you can't really tell if it's a man or a woman or non-binary individual, because this is for everybody. But also something really cool. And we found one really cool, and it was a person from Ukraine, but we couldn't get in touch with them. So then Jasmine went on a hunt to find the perfect artist.
Yeah.
And how did you present it to the artist?
Well, I had some inspiration cover art, and I described the project and the fact that I acknowledged that it was very difficult to create a piece of art that represented a large, diverse group of authors. So the cover art is actually by a Ukrainian woman artist's commission. Her name is Lena Semenkova. She's immensely talented. And so I kind of came to her, with this desire to, represent a very diverse group of authors. I asked her to include some hot pink and some blues. I gave her a couple color codes. And also kind of the cyberpunk theme that Angela had identified during that brainstorming session. And I was really happy with what she came back with, since, there's nothing in stock art websites databases that is going to represent a huge diverse group. But I think this art is much closer.
And what we love, like, I think everybody in the book just loves the cover, because it makes us feel very real. Like, there's a couple bags under your eyes, you got a big bandage on like, this is how we feel at the end of an incident. We're still surviving, but we sort of all feel that way. And when I said something like that to someone, they were like, wow, what a great cover. And I said, yeah, this is the way we feel. And they're like, really? I just looked at it and thought, wow, that's really badass. Like they had a totally different perspective than those of us that live it. And I was like, okay, well, I'll take that, right?
It also reminds me, sorry, Marco, go ahead.
No, go, Angela, go.
It also reminds me of like going into a really cool modern RPG game and creating your own character, and the process of like creating a character for like an hour. Yep. And you're like tweaking the eye color and the eye shape and the hair and all of the things. And to me, I'm like, anybody could make this avatar, and it's for anybody.
My question would be, when is the comic book coming out? I want to see this character, in the story, and how it's representing all of you. But of course, now I don't want to push on other things. Tell
Put
me more
ideas
about
in Jasmine's head.
Well, I've been trying to convince an employer to let me do a comic strip for years. However, it's a lot of work and I can't draw, so it's never really gone anywhere.
Now you have the artist. I don't know. You can get all the stories from the book, and those are chapter. But okay, I'm going ahead of my time. Let's talk about this book. So you were all working separately, but together. And then when you look at this book at the end and you read it, when it's all done, it's kind of like when you make a movie. The actors usually don't see the movie until it comes out. And they're like, okay, came out good. The edited final part. How did you feel about this, and how the other author, where you're like, okay, it really came together from such a different perspective again? Would you have done something different, maybe?
I would not actually change anything about my approach, other than probably being a little less neurotic throughout the entire process, which is generally my experience when I look back on things.
Yeah, I agree. I thought like we were given kind of a form and a time frame, and I'd say like that was just enough guidance for me to get where I needed to go. Had Jasmine come back and been like, we have another 3 to 6 months, it would have turned out completely differently, but I don't think it would have been as good, because I was allowed to keep focus for what I needed to keep focus with. And again, there was this collaboration going on with all of us remotely, where I remember saying to somebody at some point, I've been reading other people's chapters, and now I think maybe I didn't swear enough in mine. Like, it was one of these things where other people were kind of informing some of the choices I was choosing to make. And it was one of those things where I was trying to figure out, okay, was that, like, did I go far enough or did I go too far? But writing in particular for me is one of those things, like, if I obsess about it long enough, like, I'll never end. So I thought, the process itself was one of those things that I was really happy was done the way it was for that reason.
Agreed, right? Like, writing, it doesn't matter what you write about, writing is an art. And with any art, it's never finished. Like, right. You may think it's good, it's good, but you could continue to tweak it. There's things that at some point I was like, I don't want to read this again. My chapter, I was like, I don't want to look at it. And then now coming back, I'm like, I wish I added this part. I wish I shared a little bit of this. There's things I would have added in, but at the same time, I could do that forever. So having a deadline is imperative.
So talking about, somebody mentioned experience, and I think each of us, and it's represented in the cover as you were all describing how you viewed the cover image. I can see somebody in that image trying to protect themselves. Perhaps a different view is somebody on a mission, right, to do something good. And I can spend hours just analyzing that, and then you can see different people and different ways of thinking and everything in that image, which brings me to the wealth of knowledge that came from all the authors, right? I believe there are analysts and practitioners and CISOs and everything in between. Jasmine, I don't know if you can kind of share who we obviously have you three on, but who are the rest of the crew that helped make this come together?
Sure. Tracy Bannon, Senior Principal Software Architect and DevOps Advisor at MITRE Corporation. Breanne Boland, Product Security Engineer at Gusto. Amy Devers, Chief of Staff at Jupiter One. Yvie, who is a Cybersecurity Assurance and Risk Analyst at Jupiter One. Lonye Ford, CEO at Arlo. Alison Gianotto, CEO at Snipe IT. Lisa Hall, CISO at Keller. Rachel Harpley, Talent Advisor, InfoSec, IT Security and Cybersecurity at USC. Joyous Huggins, founder of Hack Joyously. Ashleigh, Senior Marketing Manager at Jupiter One. Latha Maripuri, CISO at Uber. Rin Oliver, Technical Community Builder, now Software Engineer at US Bank. Carlota vCISO at Fractional CISO. Coleen Shane, Senior Network Security Engineer at Quick Quack Car Wash. Aubrey Stearn, who is a self-employed interim CTO. And Carla Sun, Security Engineer at Gusto.
Wow, I didn't expect the CEOs, which is really cool. I love that, and I'm like totally interested to get their perspective on this. And another question I had for you, and I don't know if each of you want to chime in here. I'm kind of going on that experience thing again. To share a story, not to just say, "Here's what I've done," and this worked for me, and this is one path you can follow. But I presume the authors also opened up a bit, became a bit vulnerable, and shared things that are about them and the way they think and how they do their jobs, which may not be like anybody else or everybody else, certainly. Do you feel that you kind of opened up yourself and made yourself vulnerable in the stories that you shared? And I don't know if you have any insight to the other authors as well.
I think that there is a thread of vulnerability because, again, we're kind of sharing how our experiences have shaped our approach to work, along with culture, education, other factors. A couple really powerful examples of that kind of vulnerability in the book is that Coleen Shane shares very, very openly about how her job searching experiences changed when she transitioned, and how perhaps she got more responses to resumes that had a male name on it than her female name. Another example would be Alison Gianotto, who witnessed some really just awful animal abuse, which led her into animal advocacy and InfoSec, because she was part of the kind of forensics and OSINT team that helped bring down an NFL player for dogfighting.
I'll just say that my chapter is literally my story about getting into cybersecurity, and things that I did or didn't do along the way. And then it transitions into what imposter syndrome looks like within tech cybersecurity, and how much it's increased in the talking about it over the past few years, and how the conversations really change. I think the fact that it is my story about me is obviously vulnerable, but it makes me question the vulnerability in that, like, am I giving good advice because this is just one person's perspective? So I typically, if I talk to anyone or present about my chapter and the book in general, I preface it with, I come from this background, I had these advantages, I am a middle-class white woman, right? I know that others struggle more or less So it is right. It's like, I hope that it's beneficial to see the perspective that I shared, but also knowing that it won't solve all the problems.
Well, and I agree. I think that the sharing that the authors did for vulnerability was very interesting to me. Colleen's chapter in particular, like, she talked a lot about DEF CON and Black Hat from 2019, and I was at that, and I had taken my kids with me. So I was immersed in that world from the perspective of being a parent. And her perspective was so completely different that it was really interesting to me to be able to look at it through that lens and kind of reevaluate some things that were happening in my truth, because I had my teenage daughter with me and my teenage son, and kind of like that my lens was so completely different that it was one of those things that I actually went to them and was like, hey, do you remember these parts? Like, what was your perspective? Because then became super interested in other people's perspectives of things, right? And kind of where they were at in their life. And I think when I talk about empathy, that very much reflects Angela's statement. Like, again, came from, we'll call it a lower class white woman, but I'm a little bit older, and I have these other experiences of raising teens in a digitally aware world, which, let's face it, was not a thing when, I was growing up in the 70s. Like, my perspective is completely different, right? Kind of thing. But it does me well to step back and remember that. And I talked about this a little bit, I think, on my Pancakes Con talk. Like, somebody who can deliver a message about what getting into the industry is like for them today is so much of value to me, because those are not experiences I have. I got into the industry 30 years ago. My experience is way less relevant to new people now, because they'll never be in that position. They'll never be pre 9/11. They'll never be on wired networks that, very much were defined end to end. Like, they're never going to have that experience today. Whereas me being able to hire people and understand where they are and what kind of world they're coming from is so valuable.
Yeah, I love that. I love that perspective. And it makes me think about when you write a book, you start with a why, right? I mean, it's like, why do I do this? And I normally think you also envision your ideal reader or audience if you're doing a podcast or an Audible. And you think like, okay, I'm writing for this category of person, or this is my objective. But sometimes then the final product, and I'm imagining, especially when there is so many different hands and brains and coming to this, maybe something different. And maybe you're appealing to the audience that you were even thinking you were going to. But I'm curious to know, like, was there like a brief that says this is for the new people that come in the industry? Or, and I'm thinking it could go both ways, it's for the people who've been in the industry for a long time, and maybe it's time for them to freaking change by reading this and realize what they're doing wrong and what they could do to make things better. So love your opinion on this.
So I think it's both. Again, I don't think it's a one or the other. I think the world is changing such that recognizing different perspectives only makes us stronger. And the reality is everybody is defined by their personal experiences, and just being able to relate those experiences and somehow make that connection makes the world stronger and makes us understand why we're doing what we're doing and what we're doing to protect cybersecurity and why that's important to everyone.
I don't remember there being a time where we were like briefed on this is our audience, focus on the audience. I think Jasmine basically was reaching out to people who she thought had something to say, and then confirmed, do you want to say what you have to say? Okay, cool, go for it. knowing that, right, this is open to everyone and we don't have a pinpointed audience.
But when you were writing, sorry, Jasmine, that Angela, when you were writing, who were you picturing holding that book? Like a
For
young
me
person?
personally,
yeah,
legitimately everyone. I'm like, everyone needs to know this, whether you agree with me or not. Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Cool. Sorry, Jasmine, go ahead.
Yeah, so I will say that I had definitely some kind of audience conversations internally with my employer who graciously sponsored this project, and something that I had to defend and very carefully edit toward was ensuring that every chapter had value for mid to senior level folks. I believe that's true. So I think that mid to senior level folks who are trying to understand different perspectives to create more inclusive environments was perhaps primary audience. Amazon reviews indicate that a lot of individuals trying to break in also have gotten a lot of value from the book. And I also want to share a quote that I actually emailed to the authors one Friday when we were all kind of in crunch mode and really tired. That is maybe the overarching why behind the project, which is no Black woman writer in this culture can write too much. No woman writer can write too much. No woman has ever written enough. And that's from Bell Hooks.
Love it. Love it. And I don't know why I'm sticking with experience, but I'm going to stick with experience again, because there was an excerpt posted by Latha, and it shows her path. There's a visual of her path. And it seems, she starts as an engineer. And I'm just wondering, to me, that seems to be the natural path into cybersecurity, some technical entry point. We've spoken to many on our podcast that don't come from an engineering or a technical background. InfoSec Sherpa, for example, coming from a librarian background. Do you have any? Can you share any authors that didn't enter this field from that place?
Angela just raised her hand. Angela, you have a degree in, is it fine arts?
Yeah. Fine arts, and then pre-law, and then really questioned my life and what I was doing and why I was doing it for like the second or third time. Anyone else? I'm not sure.
So I share Marco's political science background. Was what
I remember that. Yeah.
But again, it was the 90s. Like, tech degree, it wasn't really a thing. I was a political science major, and I went to work for profit. And they were like, not afraid of computers. How about we send you to school and you learn something technical? Okay. But that's not a journey I would expect people to be able to do now. Like, it was very much this right now important because not enough people know about technology.
We have two authors, Yvie and Breanne, who are both boot camp grads. Breanne's a former editor, and Yvie's initial plan was fashion. Rin's original kind of education path was in PR. So there is a number of different backgrounds. There's also authors who discuss kind of their military pathway, which I think is a fairly traditional cybersecurity pathway, as well as their decision to not do traditional higher ed. And I think we need all of these perspectives.
So what will be again, I'm just going to generalize, but with 19 authors, it's hard to find a linear path to here. But what will be the biggest lesson, the most important lesson, maybe that the people could get from reading a book like this? And given everybody's going to make their own mind, but success for this book, like what is this reinvention all about?
Jasmine, you have something you want to say? I'm gonna give a quote.
Sure.
I'm going to give it after you say what you want to say.
Yeah, because I want to hear both, and Meg when she come back.
Yeah, I think that Latha has a fantastic quote in her chapter about how you have to be very intentional about diversity, about talent, and about the kind of team culture you're creating. And I think that is the key takeaway, is that all of us, authors, and I think many of our readers are very aware, as Angela put it, that there's others who have faced more and less adversity, and that diversity and inclusion and equity are not accidents. They are the byproduct of very deliberate work on ourselves and in our organizations.
I would say, and then I'm going to see if Meg has something to add. I would say that there's never not a time where you can reinvent yourself or where you have a lesson to learn. So as Jasmine mentioned earlier, right, the reader that is supposed to be in this category of like main aim for audience, doesn't matter where you lie within that spectrum, there's something that you can take away from every perspective, whether it's similar to yours or not, whether the background is the same as yours or not, right? And maybe you've gone through the same situation and had a different outcome, and you start to read and you say, right, well, oh yeah, I've already encountered this. Don't stop there. Like, continue to see how this person handled it and take it as a lesson learned that then you don't have to learn in the future, or a new way to, right, combat whatever hurdle it may be next time. Meg?
I'm off mute. I don't know if you guys can hear me.
We can hear you.
Yes.
You can hear me? Okay. I agree. I think where you are today in your journey is not where you're going to be tomorrow. It's very much a growth thing. So this is one of those books you would pick up over and over and over again, in my view, because the lens you look at it will be different. And so if you remember that, there's always something to pick up kind of next in life. I use this analogy a bunch. I talk about identities with my teens that, for a long time I was Meg, and then I went, and I got married, and then I became Mrs. Layton, and then I had kids, and for a long time I'm positive nobody knew my name. I'm positive they knew me as George and Katie's mom. And that was like that was how everybody knew me, right? And it was one of the, that's a journey you're on, and it's okay, because, the next day you're something different. And I don't see it as these experiences only inform where I am today. They're going to inform you over and over and over again, and you're going to take something different away from it, wherever you are in kind of your journey.
I think perhaps as we start to wrap, I don't know if maybe we can get a final thought from folks if they have something else they want to add. I just want to say that, kind of to your point, Meg, it's a constant learning, right? Based on the experience you had yesterday, you're going to learn something new today, and then tomorrow something different based on your experience today. But the other thing that I'm taking from this, which it really strikes me with the number of authors, is your experience impacts others, right? What you do with your experience, how you think about it, and the changes you make to your own little space impacts others. And that kind of goes to what Jasmine was saying as well. This isn't about just reinventing yourself and your own reinventing cybersecurity mindset, but it's doing it in a way that's purposeful and meaningful for an environment that is supportive of others, giving them a space to grow and think and explore their own journey, right? And by sharing yours, you're hopefully giving them some ideas and insights that might help them, but also giving them a safe space to have their own experience as they take that journey. That's, for me, that's the big takeaway from this book and this conversation.
That's really touching. When I interview or have, discussions with security folks, I often end those conversations by asking, what gives you hope for the future? Because the work that we do is literally impossible, and is becoming more impossible on a daily basis. But we still get up every day and continue to do it. And I feel like the kind of public reception to this book is something that gives me hope for the future. Genuine excitement from, individuals who are cis men, because they really genuinely want to create more inclusive teams and inclusive industry. The book is now at it's in the University of Massachusetts library. And also the fact that many authors acknowledge that for the first time in their career, they feel like they have the space to acknowledge their identity in the workplace, which perhaps didn't exist for them earlier in career. So I think it's kind of a product of a lot of positive change, and perhaps could spark more positive change. And that is something that really gives me hope for the future.
Yeah, and I want to just share my opinion in what you Jasmine said before, which is that this change, it cannot just come on its own. We need to really work hard for this. It needs to be intentional decision that we need to just not talk, but as they say, walk that talk. And it pissed me off a lot, because when we started the magazine, that was 7 years ago, I was like, I can't believe that it's 2015 and we're still talking about this. And now it's 2022 and I can't believe it even less that we're still talking about this. But I also have to admit that because of the examples of people like you and the fact that you put yourself out there, write books, talk on podcasts, and really are a strong community within the community, that I think we're starting to see this difference. So I welcome a million more books like this, and I hope that the other people will be inspired to do so. So that's my take on this. We got to keep fighting. And maybe, Jasmine, go back to your original book title. I was a little stronger, but I'm up for that.
Well, I guess I could be passively recruiting authors to share scorched earth stories of not so passive resistance in their organizations.
Yeah.
So sometimes passive resistance speaks the loudest. It takes a little bit longer to get through, but working within the structure can sometimes make it a stronger out. Has been my experience. So it's one of those things where the very first step on any of that is talking about it. And I think this book really lends voice to people who maybe haven't had the opportunity to share their stories.
Yep, we caught most of that, Meg, and we'll see if the platform picked up all of it for us when we produce this. But I think, I guess to your final point there, Meg, is there is no one silver bullet, no one way to do anything, and if there was, then we'd all be one similar, identical person, and that would be super shitty. So I love.
Certainly would be boring.
It certainly would be boring. I love the kitty that Angela's holding up.
This is soup, and she also thinks that would be super shitty.
Yes. All right. Well, yes, Marco.
Yes, I will be curious to get the feedback from people that did read this book and really know what it means for them. And Jasmine, you kind of mentioned you're getting some feedback. I encourage people to comment on this podcast when we publish it on social media. Get in touch with Angela and Meg and Jasmine here and any other author. So we'll share all that you want to share, all the resources you want to give us, on top, of course, of the link to the book. And we hope it's going to spark a really, really lively conversation of people that really want to do something about it. And
action.
Oh yeah, of course. That's the point. So,
all right. Well, I want to thank the three of you for being here, and the other 16 authors for supporting you behind the scenes for this conversation and for the creation of your book. And I want to thank everybody for listening to this. Hopefully you're sitting there thinking, how can you reinvent yourself in this world of cybersecurity? And in the process, hopefully help others around you do the same. So grab a copy of the book, connect with this amazing crew. Stay tuned for more redefining cybersecurity here on ITSP Magazine. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
EdgeScan offers continuous vulnerability intelligence as a service, accurately identifying vulnerabilities and exposures across the full stack. All threats are verified by cybersecurity experts, providing exploitable risk and remediation guidance, virtually false positive free. Learn more at edgescan.com. Pantera, the leader in automation security validation, allows organizations to continuously test the integrity of all cybersecurity layers by emulating real-world attacks at scale to pinpoint the exploitable vulnerabilities and prioritize remediation towards business impact. Learn more at www.pantera.io. Asgardio by WSO2 is a developer-focused identity and access management solution. Offered as Identity as a Service, or IDaaS, Asgardio by WSO2 creates seamless login experiences to your apps in minutes.
Imperva is the cybersecurity leader whose mission is to protect data and all paths to it with a suite of integrated application and data security solutions. Learn more at imperva.com.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Redefining Security podcast. If you learned something new and this podcast made you think, then share itspmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.